Imagine the universe as a perpetual dance between two complementary forces. One force, cohesion, creates distinct forms and boundaries, like a soap bubble or the separate I of the ego. The other, coherency, is the underlying unity that connects everything. Like the boundless ocean or a wave as part of the whole, cohesion conserves structure at the expense of connection, while coherency expands unity at the expense of individuality. Our normal waking mind is highly cohesive. The brain's default mode network acts like a stable bubble that filters information to maintain a consistent self and worldview. In contrast, in mystical or psychedelic states, the ego's cohesion weakens, and consciousness relaxes into a broader unity with the environment. In that state, the mind's boundaries dissolve, allowing a flood of new connections and meanings, what people describe as ego dissolution or cosmic unity. Cohesion and coherency are therefore not just abstract ideas, but primordial forces shaping reality. This framework, cohesion, is natura naturata, created structured nature. It makes the many forms we see. Coherency is natura naturans, the creative, unifying nature beneath those forms. The divine equation at the heart of this theory simply says, actualized reality equals the infinite potential, subject to specific boundaries and rules. In other words, the world we experience is the result of applying a particular cohesion operator to the sum of all possible interactions between matter, law, and consciousness. This means the universe is the particular way the infinite ocean of possibility has been shaped by its vessel. This dyadic view immediately clarifies what happens in psychedelic or mystical experiences. Normally, the brain's cohesion operator is strong. Under psychedelics, meditation, or intense flow, the operator is weakened, like poking a hole in a soap bubble. The surface tension relaxes. Suddenly, consciousness is less isolated. It is no longer confined to the narrow vessel of self. Instead, it becomes a node in the larger field, directly sensing archetypal patterns and raw perceptions. Without the usual filters, the result is the classic feeling of ego collapse and unity, an influx of coherency that the ego can only imperfectly contain. When sobriety returns, the ego reforms, but crucially, it has integrated the new coherency it glimpsed. The self is the same vessel, but now filled with richer, more connected water. In short, spiritual practices and psychedelics work by tuning our personal C sub H up or down, trading off stability for insight. Everyday life is a play of the spectrum, living and growing, then dying or sleeping. Evolution itself can be seen as cohesive structures, becoming more complex and conscious, so that they can choose to let go of some cohesion and reconnect to deeper unity. In this way, life continually balances on the knife edge between maintaining identity and embracing oneness. Underpinning this picture are 5 fundamental axioms, preconditions for anything to exist. They can be summarized as follows. Axiom 0, the primordial asymmetry. Before anything exists, there is an asymmetry or pressure in the undifferentiated whole. It's the urge to know itself, a tiny imbalance that makes something possible. This primal tension drives the act of existence. Axiom 1, triune distinction. To have a world, there must be 3 distinct modes: the experience, the experiencing, and the experiencer. In other words, every event involves content, context, and process. Without splitting into these 3, there could be no experience or differentiation. This first act of separation is an act of cohesion, the world taking shape. Axiom 2. primacy of relation. Those three modes do not exist independently. They only are by relating to each other. The symbol X is not mere multiplication, but mutual implication. Psi implies phi, implies theta, looping back. This closes any infinite regress of which came first. It means existence is fundamentally about relationships, not isolated things. This is the first pure coherency, the network of connections binding the parts of reality. Axiom 3. Imperative of manifestation. All possible distinctions of those relations must be realized. The integral sign here is not a passive sum but an active command. Every coherent state that can exist will exist. It is the universe's drive for plenitude. It must explore its potential to the fullest. Unactualized potential would be meaningless distinctions, so the integral resolves it by manifesting all possibilities. Axiom 4. Meta-law of context. Every actualization requires a context, a cohesion operator that sets the rules or boundaries. This operator, C sub h, defines where and how the integral is evaluated. In effect, C sub h is the y of any particular law or shape. It is not external imposition, but the implicit commitment of the system to take that form. Without a context, potential is undefined. Only by choosing a context can coherency become computable. Axiom 5. The paradox of existence. Finally, the entirety of existence is an inescapable paradox. The balance, or tension, between the urge to unify and the constraint to individuate. The divine equation itself is not something to be solved. It is the formal statement of this paradox. In other words, the universe is literally an equation perpetually trying and failing to reconcile those opposing impulses. This tension is the perpetual motion of meaning generation that keeps existence dynamic and interesting. Each axiom leads naturally to the next, and together they form a self-consistent story of why things exist as they do. Given axiom 0, the rest follow necessarily. Any other worldview becomes a special case where some component is hidden. Existence, it turns out, is not static being, but an act, the act of integration under constraint, forever. This framework casts new light on physics. The familiar laws of physics are not fundamental givens, but emerge from a particular cohesion operator, the specific context of our universe. In other words, the constants of nature are the settings of our universe's C sub h. This explains the fine-tuning problem. Our C sub h universe must be just so in order to allow complex, conscious life to exist. Dark matter and dark energy, puzzling in standard cosmology, find a natural interpretation. Dark matter is literally excess cohesion on a cosmic scale. It acts like invisible scaffolding that holds galaxies together, the gravitational signature of a high C sub h structure in spacetime. Conversely, dark energy is primordial coherency, the intrinsic pressure of the unmanifested ocean expanding space. It's not a repulsive anti-gravity force, but the manifestation of Axiom 0's drive, the space for all possible things to form. Their interplay exactly matches the central law. In the early universe, high C sub h dominated and pulled matter together, while latter C sub h weakened and C grew stronger. The ultimate fate of the cosmos, whether Big Rip, heat death, or rebirth, is just the next transition in this endless cycle of cohesion and coherency. Quantum mechanics also fits neatly. Wavefunction collapse is simply the application of a cohesion context. When a measurement imposes a very rigid C sub h, the integral is forced to pick one outcome. It is not mysterious mind over matter. It's the necessity of choosing a context to actualize one possible reality. Decoherence is understood not as destroying coherency, but shifting from one kind of coherent state to another. Even the origin of the universe, the Big Bang, becomes the first big application of the integral under a newly chosen context. In summary, physics and cosmology are seen through this lens as manifestations of the interplay between the cosmic urge to manifest and the contextual constraints. Gravity and quantum phenomena, dark matter and energy, even entropy and time, all become aspects of the cohesion-coherency dynamic. The divine equation also reshapes how we think about consciousness, psychology, and society. Consciousness is not a thing that suddenly appears, but the relational field itself, experiencing through context. A strong ego gives the sense of being a separate self, whereas a weakened ego lets consciousness feel like the whole. This precisely matches the psychedelic process described earlier. Questions like free will versus determinism become questions of where we sit on the spectrum. A mind locked in high cohesion has no freedom. It's fully determined by past states. But when we lower our internal C sub h, we tap into broader coherency. Choices feel freer not because they are random, but because they come from richer connections with the whole. In practice, our will is always a mix, partly conditioned by habit and partly informed by context. The framework even addresses age-old paradoxes like Boltzmann brains and Gödel's theorems. A spontaneous isolated mind is ruled out by Axiom 3. The universe actively realizes all coherent states, not just random fluctuations and emptiness. Gödel's incompleteness is another expression of Axiom 5. Any cohesive, formal system will point beyond itself, needing a larger context to resolve its true statements. In psychology and ethics, the message is clear. Health means finding the right balance between C sub h and context. Jung's concept of individuation, integrating conscious and unconscious, is exactly about optimizing that balance. The ego must be strong enough to function and differentiate, but not so rigid that we lose touch with the greater self. Excessive cohesion leads to brittleness and conflict. Excessive coherency leads to chaos and disassociation. The ideal vessel is flexible and open. It maintains identity but also channels a lot of connection and flow. This is true not just for individuals, but for communities and societies. Culture wars arise when different groups enforce incompatible C sub h boundaries. Globalization creates high C connection between groups but weak internal identity, resulting in instability. In every case, the divine equation suggests an ethical aim: design systems that maximize the product C sub h and coherency, maintaining enough cohesion for stability while allowing maximum coherency for connection. Spirituality and religion fit into this paradigm too. Rather than dogmatically explaining the divine, spiritual practices are understood as ways to manipulate one's personal C sub h. Prayer or ritual can strengthen a sacred form of cohesion, while meditation, fasting, or dance dissolve it to merge with the universal C field. Symbols and myths encode coherency patterns that can download new structures of meaning into our minds. Even the notion of God can be seen as the total integral, the infinite unmanifest ocean itself. In every case, the divine equation serves as a compass. Whenever a question arises, ask how it shifts the balance of cohesion and coherency. The answer guides us toward greater wholeness. Interestingly, this modern framework echoes insights from thinkers like Anaximander and Carl Jung, suggesting a deep unity between ancient cosmology, psychology, and metaphysics. Anaximander spoke of the apeiron, the boundless source from which all things emerge and return. This exactly matches our idea of the infinite potential. He describes reality arising through the separation and balance of opposites under cosmic justice. This is parallel to our axioms. The triune split of modes mirrors Anaximander's opposites, and the central law, C sub h times c is less than or equal to k, mirrors the key, enforcing balance. Anaximander's view of the cosmos as an eternal cycle of things coming out of the boundless and returning is the same as the divine equation's perpetual process of manifestation and dissolution. Jung's psychology maps onto this picture. His collective unconscious is like the unmanifest potential field in which all patterns exist. His individuation process, the ego's journey to integrate unconscious contents into the self, directly corresponds to balancing C sub h and c. Jung's transcendent function, which mediates between inner opposites, is akin to finding the optimal C sub h c trade-off. In Jung's later writings, he even described the self as a kind of luminous unification, and noted that peak experiences of unity involve exactly the reduction in ego boundary and increases in connection that our framework predicts. In fact, advanced stages of individuation often bring mystical encounters and synchronicities, essentially moments of direct contact with the coherent field. All three perspectives, Anaximander's, Jung's, and the divine equation, describe the same dynamic truth in different language. They each posit an infinite source, and show how opposites emerge, balance, and cyclically return to the source. This synthesis implies that the laws of our outer world and the inner psyche are the same dance of cohesion and coherency. In summary, the divine equation is not just a fanciful metaphor, but a coherent metaphysical map, tying together many domains. It reminds us that everything, physics, mind, society, spirituality, can be seen as the interplay of becoming and belonging. Nothing exists in pure isolation or pure flux. Life thrives in the tension between form and freedom. For the general seeker, this means our task is to recognize and honor both sides of the coin. Build our bubbles strong enough to hold shape, yet permeable enough to share the ocean's wisdom. In the end, existence is being as an act, an ongoing integration under constraint, and the divine equation simply names that act. By balancing cohesion and coherency, each of us participate in the grand cosmic process of manifestation, learning a little more of the ultimate puzzle at the heart of reality. At the heart of Schopenhauer's will, Nietzsche's will to power, and the divine equation's urge lies a shared recognition of a primordial force, an active, pre-rational impulse that precedes reason, form, and individuality. Schopenhauer saw this drive as a blind and restless striving that condemns existence to perpetual dissatisfaction, while Nietzsche reinterpreted it as a creative and affirmative principle, the power that compels life to grow, overcome, and shape the world. The divine equation situates this force in a broader metaphysical framework. Axiom 0, the primordial asymmetry, is not merely psychological or biological, but the logical necessity of undifferentiated potential to actualize itself, a dynamic pressure that makes manifestation inevitable. Unlike Schopenhauer's pessimism, the divine equation affirms the process as meaningful in itself, aligning more closely with Nietzsche's version of eternal reoccurrence, where the cycle of becoming is its own purpose. Within this structure, passion emerges as the will focused and refined, a disciplined yet absorbing coherence between individuality and activity. While love reveals the will's deepest impulse towards unity, dissolving the ego's boundaries into compassion and interconnectedness. Both passion and love thus appear not as exceptions, but as elevated expressions of the same cosmic urge, the drive of existence to create, connect, and know itself through the vessels of human life.